The Shop 3 Sheep Eater. Written and read by W.P. Thrift, who can be contacted at Lantis Armstrong on Twitter. And cover art created by JD, contactable at Radix_L on Twitter. Chapter 3 The Georgia Peach Farm. The stretched limo hadn't traveled for long before the Marches resumed their conversation, still observing Lantis, who nervously looked around the roomy interior of the vehicle.
"Oh, I just can't wait to get started with you,"
Mr. March said. Lantis, still assuming that this was a sex thing, flinched at that.
"First we have to get him out of those clothes,"
Mrs. March added. Lantis began to curl up, defensively.
"Oh, of course. I mean, they're filthy. Like, not even dirty filthy. You'll get plenty dirty during our training, but what you're wearing is just cruddy,"
Mr. March confirmed. "Wait, what?" Lantis asked, unshrinking himself a little. "What do you mean, training?"
"Well, like every professional, you took the job without even asking what it would be,"
Mr. March said, so delighted that Lantis was everything he was hoping he would be, at least in his own mind.
"But I guess I should tell you, Lantis, or should I call you Solid Biscuit? That's right, we know who you really are, and it's time that you learned who we are. We're your brother's bosses. We trained him, and now we're gonna train you. Oh, but not like we trained him. Oh, no. It's gonna be much, much harder on you." "You see, my dear,"
Mrs. March said,
"we're both getting on in years, and we need a replacement. You will take up the torch for us when we're gone. So your mission, in this case, is to learn everything there is to know about being a stealth agent from the greatest two that ever lived, us."
Mr. March finally revealed. "Why me over any other random person off the street?" Lantis asked. Lantis was just a nobody, after all. He hung out with his friends, played video games, was angry on the forums, and occasionally was harassed by monsters. He had absolutely no abilities out of the ordinary. Sure, he was talented at certain things, but so was everyone else. That was the bottom line here. He was utterly, painfully normal.
Oh, I see. You are extremely wise."
Mr. March's eyes lit up.
"Oh, yes, indeed,"
Mrs. March confirmed as well.
"Your abilities are clearly superior to anyone we've ever known, but you can somehow sense our chi? Is this correct? You know how strong we are, and that next to us you are like nothing at all. So why not someone off the streets, comparatively? Oh, you have such a bright sense of humor.
Lantis scratched his head. "I don't get it. What makes you think I'm anything at all compared to others?"
"You don't know?"
Mrs. March asked.
"Oh, Doug, you never told him." "I never did,"
Mr. March confirmed.
"Lantis, Liquid went to investigate Turtle Creek Apartments after Beverly Lunch Lady and the two robots attacked. We know that you destroyed them. You were the only one there who could have. So we know that you're something special if you can do that. Also,"
Mrs. March added,
"your stealth agent shop has been in operations for... how long is it?"
"A very long time," Lantis said quickly, recalling Bowman's orders not to tell anyone that it had just opened today.
"Exactly,"
Mrs. March said.
but we can't find any evidence of its operations before you suddenly popped up on our map today. And we are, like we said, the best in the world. Yet you were so sneaky and clever. It was like your operations never even existed until right now. And the way you use toxic gas to ward off would-be unsuspecting terrorists that might attack you. Woo-hoo!
Mr. March referred back to what was, unbeknownst to him, the natural stink of the shop.
Well, I don't know how you trained yourself to survive it unaided by gas masks, but woohoo! That's quite the impressive feat. And I'm guessing the real base of operations are underneath the shop. Clearly you don't operate out of the one we entered.
In reality, Lantis had been drug away from Liquid Lunch Lady's attack, while Peter, Bowman, and the horrifying monster Sweeney Matt took care of her and both of the robots. Liquid's report was biased in his brother's favor, and he didn't investigate it very well at all. But Lantis's lineage was accurate. He was one of the 3 terrible children from Mar. He had never really known what that meant, besides the fact that on occasion, the Lady of Terror herself, Mar, would stalk and attack him.
I would ask if you were excited to get started training, but I know you gotta be,
Mr. March exclaimed.
Well, not if he doesn't believe us when we say that we can make him as strong and skilled as us,
Mrs. March pointed out.
A good point. Well, a little humility never hurt anyone. Besides, we've got a deal. He's stuck working with us whether he likes it or not.
Mrs. March looked out of the window. They were too dark for anyone to see in, and still almost too dark to see out of. She watched as the limo left Cattailville and headed out towards the countryside.
Say, Lantis,
Mrs. March said,
you haven't been working with that Radix McLeod, have you?
I haven't heard from him in forever, Lantis replied. She nodded.
Good, good. He's taken up some sort of alliance with Alcyone.
Mrs. March's tone, very abruptly, turned almost frantic.
You should never trust that old lady. She's mean and cruel and heartless. She's the reason so many terrible things have happened in this town, and... Oh, honey, relax. Your blood pressure.
Mr. March said quickly, sounding very concerned. He slid over in the seat to get right next to her, putting his arm around her. She reached up an old, wrinkled hand to place over his own. She took a long moment to inhale, then exhaled slowly. She repeated this 3 more times before she finally gave him a slight nod, and he let her go and moved back away from her, but still sat closer than before. Lantis, across from them, was only confused by this. So, what's Radix doing? Lantis asked.
Oh, nothing we can confirm,
Mr. March replied.
But we both know that he's not working for Alcyone. He's working for... Well, I mean, with your level of intel, I'm sure you know at least as much as we do.
Now, having heard that Radix was both working for and not for Alcyone, Lantis didn't know what to believe. But given that he didn't know who that was, he wasn't sure if believing it or not even mattered. Lantis had 0 clue. He wasn't a real stealth agent except in title, and he didn't even know what that title meant. He just knew that he and Bowman got to go back to running the shop, and then all of this happened. But he was just going to roll with it. If he stuck out this training, then Bowman had promised him a $5 fast food meal. He could get chicken nuggets and fries with that, maybe even soda from a machine that didn't have dehydrated 5-year-old soda in it. I must remember what I'm doing this for, Lantis thought to himself, steeling himself in his resolve. I really, really love those salty, fatty chicken nuggets. Lantis looked out the window at the trees so rapidly passing by. He wasn't used to being in a car that traveled so smoothly. or move so fast. It could go the speed limit. That was only a fevered dream in the car Bowman went around in. There was nothing around for miles but trees out here. Lantis wasn't even sure if he had properly left Cattailville before, and was somewhat excited to see the countryside. The first break in trees revealed a large field with an old wooden house at the far end, and then it was gone, and there were more trees, and then another break. This time sprawling white fields of cotton met his gaze. It was almost harvesting season, and the huge crate-like containers, which would be used to hold the cotton, were already out next to the fields.
"We're almost there now,"
Mr. March said.
"We're going to the old McCoy place. Their family's always been real friendly with the Marches. They're not in the same line of work as us, but we've used their residency to both train candidates and hide out on in the past. It's way off the beaten path. Hard for people to come looking for us. They were the nicest folks. Rest their souls,"
Mrs. March lamented. "We're going to a spooky abandoned house?" Lantis asked.
"We're going to a farm, and it's not abandoned. I was just remembering Mr. and Mrs. McCoy. They passed away a few years ago. The pterodactyls got 'em,"
Mrs. March explained.
"But their daughter still lives on the farm and takes care of it. Say, how old are you? I believe the oldest daughter is about your age. You may like her. Who knows?"
"I'm 23. Lantis quickly gave the rehearsed lie. No one actually knew his age, so he had taken up saying that he was whatever age Bowman was, and Bowman had just turned 23 last month. The limo slowed and turned onto a dirt road. Lantis could see a large sign above the road, a fence stretching out from it to encircle the entire property, which had to be at least a dozen acres. The sign read, "McCoy's Real Georgia Peaches Farm." As the sign implied, there were endless rows of peach trees as far as the eye could see as they traveled down the very long and terribly maintained dirt road. The constant shaking from dips and runoffs, forming small hills, made the limo shake like Lantis was used to Bowman's car shaking on normal roads. This put him a bit more at peace. The limo stopped, and the Marches didn't move. Lantis was about to get up when the driver opened the door and the Marches got out before him. Sitting in the car, he stared up at the large antebellum mansion, with its tilted brown roof and white pillars lining the porch. It had black frames around every window, brick steps leading up to the wooden porch, where a swing sat off to the left and a bench off to the right. Potted plants lined the porch as well, though Lantis knew nothing of plant species and couldn't have guessed at what they were. Stepping out of the car finally, Lantis was assaulted with the smell of ripe, juicy, delicious peaches. He immediately began to salivate, but wiped his mouth quickly, hoping nobody noticed. There were so many peach trees here, hundreds, if not over 1,000. He didn't know how large this farm was, but the delightful, delicious, knee-weakening scent in the air was killing him. If the peach trees were any closer, he'd not have been able to resist rushing at them. But for now, he followed the March's lead and headed towards the house. Even as he did so, his willpower started to crack. A motion caught Lantis's eye, and he looked quickly over to his right. There was a tall, red barn there. The large wooden doors were open, and several stalls inside of the barn made it look like a horse stable. If it were, there were no horses in there now. No fences were set up anywhere to keep horses from running off. The motion he had glimpsed came from within the barn, near the bales of hay in the back. He squinted, but could no longer see anything moving in there. He figured it was just a cat or something.
"You should go on inside and get washed up and into your workout suit,"
Mrs. March told him.
"Cassidy is probably out working in the fields, though. I guess I'll show you to your room." Don't worry now. They're expecting us.
The driver got back in the limo and began to back away, to turn the vehicle around and leave. Lantis watched this, then turned back to the Marches, giving them an inquisitive look.
He's about to go on a long, much-deserved vacation,
Mr. March said.
Don't worry. We can contact him again in emergencies. But the plan is, we'll be staying right here for a good long while.
They headed on up the porch and went inside of the mansion. The front door wasn't locked. It didn't even have a lock on it. It opened into, of all rooms, the kitchen. There was a long story behind that, but the short version of it was that the kitchen kept expanding over generations of McCoy living here, until eventually it swallowed up the original living room. The new living room, which was fairly old now, was off to the right, and a hall leading to the stairway was straight ahead. As they passed by the long table in the kitchen, Lantis saw a bowl of fruit in the center. He stopped, leaned in, sniffed it, and then his willpower shattered as he grabbed the entire bowl, shoving 2 plums into his mouth and then stuffing several bananas down his shirt in a mad feeding and hoarding frenzy. Mr. March reached out for him, and he bit at his hand and growled at him like an animal, before sprinting around the table, knocking over 2 chairs as he went, ducking down on the other side of the nearby kitchen counter, where he hid and devoured as much of the fruit in the bowl as possible. The majority of the fruit bowl was peaches, and there were some grapes, bananas, plums, and some assorted nuts at the bottom of it, pecans, almonds, and cashews. Lantis re-emerged quicker than one might expect, having devoured almost everything. The rest of it was stuffed into his shirt, which was now tucked into his cargo shorts for ease of transporting. Lantis had not only been starved for years, but this was the cleanest, freshest food he had ever seen in his entire life. His stomach lurched. It had been so long since it had had any real vitamins in it that it didn't even know what to do with them. Mr. and Mrs. March exchanged glances, but they couldn't figure this out. But Lantis was now standing there again, acting like nothing had happened, so they just shrugged and led the way to the stairs. Lantis's new room while living here was up the stairs and through the first door on the right. It was a simple room. Brown carpet, bed in the corner, a nightstand next to it. There was a vanity mirror and a wardrobe. Mr. March opened the wardrobe to reveal a series of identical blue tracksuits with white stripes down the side of them inside.
This'll be what you're wearing until we're done here,
Mr. March said.
And far as the missions go, I don't know what kind of stealth suit you usually use, but we're having a new one built for you very soon. It'll be arriving here shortly, so don't you worry none. Top of the line, up to mine and the missus's standards.
Lantis began to undress on the spot, having no sense of modesty.
Oh, now hold on, young'un. You need to go and shower first. Right this way,
Mr. March said. Then, to both March's surprise, he didn't stop undressing.
Wait, now hold on a minute until you get to the bathroom.
Thankfully, it was right across the hall, as he'd be walking nude back to his bedroom. It was a longer shower than usual, as Lantis enjoyed soaking in hot water. And at Bowman's, there was about 20 seconds of hot water before it turned freezing. And that was only if you were the very first person in the shower during the day, and if nobody had used it in weeks. Luckily, at Bowman's house, no one using the shower for weeks at a time was very commonplace. Lantis played with the various bottles of body soap and shampoo, but didn't actually know what they were there for. He had never seen such things before in his life. He poured them out on the floor and walked through them, slipping down in the shower immediately. He got back up and did it again, which was fun right up until he banged his head on one of the knobs. He was upset with the slippery stuff after that and stopped playing with it. Leaving the shower and exiting to walk back to his room while soaking wet, a lady he hadn't seen before was standing out in the hallway. She wore a very traditional cowgirl outfit, snakeskin boots and cowboy hat included, with 2 long golden ponytails emerging from the back and wavy bangs coming out the front. She was well aware of how unusual it was for people to dress this way these days, but as long as she was by herself on her own farm, she'd dress however the hell she liked. She had been somewhat cheeky, expecting Lantis to emerge with a towel around his waist, so that she could catch him like that and embarrass him. Instead, he emerged soaking wet and with nothing on, embarrassing her instead. She turned around quickly.
"Well, shoot, I guess I forgot to put any towels in there. Sorry, we don't use servants anymore like we used to when I was growing up. I guess I forget about this stuff sometimes."
Lantis ignored her and went on into his room. She heard this, turned back, and was perplexed by his actions.
"Now hold on a darn minute. A lot of stuff in there don't need to be getting wet,"
she yelled, then rushed to a nearby supply closet to grab out a towel and run it to his room, cracking the door open and throwing it in.
"Now dry yourself off."
After an extended pause, she heard, "Ah, so that's what towels are for. Sasquatch always just soaked them in the river, then rolled them up to pop Bowman with."
Sasquatch?"
she asked, confused. When Lantis did emerge, he was now fully dressed in a tracksuit.
"Well, that seems to fit you nicely,"
she said.
"I should know, right?"
He didn't respond.
"Heh, that's a joke, on account I saw it all. It was fitting around and... Oh, never mind."
He cocked his head to the side, confused. This wasn't making her feel any less uncomfortable.
"Anyway, I'm Cassidy, owner of this here house and farmland. I'm guessing you're the new star pupil that Mr. March has been raving about, huh?"
He tilted his head to the other side for a moment, noticing before anything else that she smelled like wheat and heavy dust, but also a hint of morning rain. He liked that combination. There was something very comforting about it. "He does believe that, yes," Lantis said. Of all the manners he didn't have, he at least knew how to extend his hand to shake during introductions. "I'm Lantis Armstrong. I stole that last name from my lawyer."
"Fake last name, huh?"
Cassidy grinned, shaking his hand.
"Figures you secret agent types would do stuff like that. My full name's Cassidy D. McCoy. Yes, I'm related to the McCoys from that famous Hatfield-McCoy thing. And no, my immediate family has never participated in any of their stupid feuds. That's why we moved over here to Georgia. Never wanted nothing to do with it."
Lantis nodded as though he knew what she was talking about, but he did not. "I should get going," Lantis said, taking a step back. But before he could turn to leave, Cassidy said,
"Now, hold up, you forgot your shoes."
"Nah, I hate shoes. This is fine," Lantis assured her. She was going to protest, but figured that he knew what he was doing. Lantis headed on down the stairs and out the front door. It was time to get this training started. Cassidy went back to the storage closet to grab some more towels and bring them to the bathroom to put them on the rack in there. And as she entered, she found that it was already fully stocked with towels. Even stranger than that, Lantis's old clothes on the floor were completely full of fruit. That concludes Chapter 3 of Sheep Eater. Tune in every Tuesday for new chapters, and please subscribe to be notified the moment they're released. If you would like to reach me, you can do so at Lantis Armstrong on Twitter. That's LANTISARMSTRONG. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us again for next week's chapter, A Light Warm-Up.